welcome. This will be my video on the brand new 2026 The Odyssey film. I'm going to start with a review that is definitely not going to spoil the film. It's possible that I'll talk about some stuff that, I feel like by now, if you want to know, you already know, is in the poem. And after that, I will get into what I call the thought section. I will verbally warn before I start on that, but that one will be full of spoilers for this movie. And the movie's rated R, so will this video be. I absolutely fucking love this movie, Jesus Christ. Okay, I think I want to... So this video is probably gonna get fucking long. So, I'm gonna... In case you don't have that much time to waste, I would... I'm gonna briefly start by just noting, if you have a fondness for the original story and or at least one Christopher Nolan film, I would recommend this. And if you absolutely love one or ideally both of aforementioned, then I would definitely recommend watching it in the theater. This is one of those movies. Let's say, I want to say, I'm pretty sure it was Nolan who said, during COVID, which not making excuses for the fact that he fought for Tenet to go into theaters, but I believe it was him who said that he makes movies for the cinema, not for streaming, not for home media. And this is yet another case of that, like, just what the man does with visuals and sound. Yeah, so I watched it, opening night. I know not everyone's going to be able to, but if you can, try to watch it in a theater, and ideally with like a huge crowd where just this game. Did not watch it in IMAX. Cannot speak to that version. I think that might just about... I guess one more preamble before we get more into it. I last read the poem 25 years ago. I did rewatch the 1997 miniseries starring Armand Assante. Probably my favorite role of his, though I do have quite the fondness for him in that Stallone Judge Dredd movie. And yeah, I also have some recollection of watching an animated one. Again, not sure I've done that any time in the last 25 years. One of the things I do remember about it is that I have no idea if this is also true for the English dub, original English version, but the Danish dub used one of the actors from the 87 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I believe it was Michelangelo even, and it was actually a very serious line that had me realize, oh, that's Michelangelo. So that was interesting. I am not an expert. I know I have the facial hair of like a scholar, but I am not one. This is going to be off remembered stuff from the poem, not like intense recent study of it. And yeah, it's possible that some of what I praise this film for, maybe it's in the poem as well. So just to be clear, I'm not like trying to give special credit to, I'm not saying Nolan came up with everything in this. And yeah, I guess I'll briefly note, this is now my favorite version of this adaptation. I mean, I'm one of those people who don't think that there's truly a replacement for the original. Yeah, I think that is, yeah, so let's get into, so the writing, I hope you're down for another Nolan-esque nonlinear timeline, because this has one. And I think this is one of the ones that is the most successful. And I'm just really glad that he picked something like this for his fantasy epic, not like a Lord of the Rings or something, because boy, would that not have worked, in my opinion, having watched, Lord of the Rings trilogy, Hobbit trilogy. But yeah, the Odyssey, there's some stuff you could play with there without it feeling, I'm not super used to it in these adaptations. Most of the ones I remember are largely linear, but it is a story that spans so long, and some of the stories it works well to, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say it is his most successful nonlinear, but it is still really, really solid. And I think that is... Yeah, I'll briefly note, like, I know some people were worried that this would be, like, too much of a modern take on it. There's still a bunch of stuff in this that you would expect from the poem, or rather an adaptation thereof. And Nolan doesn't really, like, this is something I really appreciate. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say he always did this, but maybe he was just, like, finding his footing early on. But in recent years, he started, really pushing what he can do in a film. I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't say that any of his movies felt stale. He always came up with something new, interesting. But for a while, it was kind of variations. And in recent years, the last several movies he's made, we've seen stuff that's like, never thought he would, I mean, before this, there was, this political, I mean, I guess thriller, but, but yeah, with Oppenheimer, we also had the sci-fi movie he made, so yeah, really, really appreciate that he's doing this, and I think this is one of the most successful ones. I think, this is a better fantasy epic than, in my opinion, Dunkirk is as a war movie. And I suppose, yeah, if you are at all worried, I definitely don't get the sense that Nolan doesn't respect the original story, or you know, the impact that it has had, albeit some conservative grifters will say things about that impact that don't actually make sense, but that is kind of their, you know, it's their reason for being paid. And yeah, I think that does bring us nicely to the yeah, like other versions, this does grab us right away. It is a concept that is very easy to get emotionally invested in. And yeah, I think the use of setup and payoff, not a huge surprise for Nolan, but it is really excellent. And tension and suspense equally so. There is, like, I understand why. Is that too much of a spoiler? I will say this has some of the most effective tension and suspense of his career. And yes, I appreciate the weight of that claim. And if you've watched it and you disagree, please let me know why, because this yeah, I felt like there were times in this where I could feel everyone in the entire room. There were dozens of us collectively holding our breath. And yeah, so the psychological accuracy feels quite high. It's one of those things where Nolan at times can feel more of an observer, who I'm sure would like to think himself neutral, than someone who lives and breathes, like his passion is telling stories and, like, understanding and helping the rest of us understand things. but he sometimes sometimes his films come across a bit like he himself hasn't necessarily experienced, or maybe he has, but is unwilling to let us in quite. Like, he'll sometimes play things close to the chest. There is some of that here, but there are also times where it feels more, yeah. Um, it's not as resistant to feeling things, and this is, I think, if we're going off percentage, I'd say percentage-wise, this has the least, considering that it is a 3-hour movie. I think it might have the least of people explaining things, contrasted with the amount of time we're spending feeling and experiencing things without anyone directly explaining anything. I don't know. It's definitely, it's close to the top. It's not that it's never complicated, but it is more, yeah. So it stays true to itself. As far as authentic to real life, it's not a documentary, Mom. It is more, I felt like it captured the poem, the way people saw the world back then, really, really well. And yeah, impressed by the level of detail, especially considering that he seems to be easing off on the explaining. And yeah, really uses the concept rather well. I was quite impressed by how relevant he made this quite old story in a way that some adaptations, they kind of tend to lean on how there are certain universal truths that we can derive from, which for sure there are in the poem, but not all of them are equally interested in saying, okay, so, I mean, it doesn't spell out how this applies to the modern world. That would kind of break the fourth wall. But there were definitely times where I was like, oh, this is like this real thing that's happening right now or has recently. And yeah, as an adaptation, like, it definitely does some of the stuff that we most want to see from the poem. And if you've already watched the trailer, don't worry. There's a lot of amazing stuff that is not in them. Nolan continues to be one of those directors where his movies, like, genuinely, the marketing does not give too much away. And yeah, these are some of my favorite takes on some of the things in the poem. And I'm just really quickly going to note, please stop calling it, like, please stop acting like the poem is supposed to reflect history. Like, it's mythology, clearly. Stop sucking the fun out of it just because you're mad that it has people of color in it. Who, by the way, as, had already been theorized by some of my fellow far leftists, yeah, they do amazing job. Yeah, amazing acting in this. Like, how did you not see that coming? Like, I swear, conservatives will sometimes just hitch their wagon to the most ridiculous claims. Yeah, I'm gonna move on for now. The dialogue, definitely some Nolanisms, but he is getting better at more natural sounding, less, analytical, and I mean, I think he tends to handle exposition well, but there is a bit much expository dialogue in some of his, yeah. And there were times where I could almost feel him, like, restraining himself, because it's like, oh, this is, earlier Nolan would have had like a voiceover right here explaining the steps of what we're seeing going on, but instead we just get to experience it, And yeah, I guess that does bring us nicely to the direction. So once again, he has some fantastic ideas and choices here that not everyone would make. And I would say occasionally they don't pay off incredibly well, but they tend to. And let's see. The cinematography is spectacular. It really captures the scope. Like, I never felt like this was small, which, that hasn't really been a problem for Nolan for a while now, outside of Dunkirk. But if you look at some of his early stuff, and I'm not saying that it could have been different. I appreciate he couldn't raise as much money back then, and he tended to write stories that he could make on that kind of budget. But I really am enjoying seeing, what he can do with a big budget. And it's also just great. Like, sometimes in recent movies, especially like certain studio movies and such, like, I love the MCU. I'm willing to acknowledge that is a problem in a number of theirs, but here, like, it's so distinct the way the camera moves, the placement, the yeah, it always feels motivated. You want your camera to move in a motivated way. And the editing is also great. The nonlinear stuff, I don't want to give anything away. It's not a spoiler that it's nonlinear, by the way. That's made clear from very few minutes in. But it does work really well. He's one of those writer-directors who are great at using that to build towards something. And we don't necessarily know exactly where it's going, but we can feel like we're in good hands. And yeah, the conclusion I found very, very satisfying. I'm not giving away whether it's happy or sad before the thought section. And yeah, I was also quite impressed by the production value, set design, locations, costumes, and makeup. They are able to convey things about characters. We maybe see where someone lives or works or that sort of thing. And yeah, like, through and through, this movie looks expensive. Like, those ships look real. And the various buildings and such. Yeah, I'm really impressed by it. Like, it felt like being in these places, and they didn't feel constructed. They felt lived in. And the location scout, fantastic. Just there's some choice parts here that are just incredible. Just yeah. And let's see. I know some people took issue with at least some of the costume work from the trailers and such. I did not find it distracting in the movie itself. I know, I've seen the memes, I get it. Yeah, I think I have more to say about that, but it works better for the thought section. And yeah, the music, I don't know if it's the very best, but it is up there for Nolan's films. And yeah, it's just really emotionally engaging and striking. And the sound design, there are things in this that you are not going to forget soon, especially if you watch it in a big packed theater. I will say, if you had issue with the Bat Bale voice, as many have, and I suppose I can't exactly claim that I never have, There's at least one bit in this where they have this echo effect that is not going to be much more beloved than that, but it was used much more sparingly. And yeah, I thought it used its vast cast well. I mean, I don't even need to tell you, they managed to gather a fantastic group of amazing talents. And of course, with so many, no, not everyone gets, that much time, but I didn't really feel like any of them just got nothing. Everyone has, in my opinion, something where it's like, that's what people are going to remember. And I would also say Nolan is getting at least somewhat better at not using them as kind of pawns, characters, I mean, not actors. This one, like, there were times where I was like, oh, okay, so this is set up, but it was not as, like, sometimes you'll have, like, entire characters in one of his movies that are, like, just there to help accomplish a specific thing without us really learning what they're like, and that is less so the case here. And yeah, also fairly typical for Nolan. Some are cast against type, some with. Is that what's the opposite of against type? And I mean, I already said they all do really well. Yeah, I guess that I would also say I think he's getting at least a little bit better when it comes to female characters, which is definitely one of his most pervasive character problems. And I think this might be the best performance he's directed Anne Hathaway into. I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know if it's the best she's ever done. There's a lot of her work that I have yet to watch, unfortunately. I am quite a fan, though. And yeah, I think that does bring us to the... So as far as pacing goes, there are times where something will be over with very fast and other times where something lingers. And by and large, I agree with the choices. And yeah, I think that's as much as I can say about that without spoiling. I love the effects work in this. I would definitely say they went for practical effects whenever it was effectively practical to do so, and it really paid off. Like, there were times where I was like, I mean, there's a lot of people who would have done that with CGI. I really commend them for, like, as best I could tell, it was done with practical. It really seemed like it was only when there was truly no other choice. And that is, Nolan has expressed before, that is his philosophy of CG. He is not 100% always against it, but is an absolute last resort to him. And I'm genuinely incredibly impressed by how much he managed to limit it and still deliver such an effective fantasy epic. Like, so I already mentioned that I've watched the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies. I am not as negative on the Hobbit trilogy as a number of other people are. I thought those movies were very, very good. Love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I am difficult to please when it comes to fantasy films. I'm more open to the games, comics, and such. And yeah, this was one that absolutely, yeah. I Yeah, the stunt work was also very impressive. There's some stuff where it's like, I'm impressed they were able to do that safely. And yeah, so it is not like non-stop action, but there are action scenes in it. They are some of his best. And I also really appreciated that I never felt like there was one just for the sake of it. Like sometimes, once again, I watch everything MCU. Sometimes in one of those, it's like, oh, there's an action scene here because they're worried the audience will get distracted. And I never felt that during a Nolan film, and this is no exception. And there were definitely times where, like, a scene could have been an action scene, or an action scene could have gone on for longer, and I really appreciate that he did not. And yeah, as far as fantasy goes, it is one of those where it is not like non-stop special effects display, but it's also not shying away from, it's not one of those that are like, well, some say magic is real. No. Magic is real in this movie. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And once again, not a spoiler, revealed. I mean, yeah, very, very early on, they talk about, faith in their gods and the things that those can do. And yeah. And yeah, it's one of those where it is more interested in what they mean and what you can do that is interesting than in just being like, oh, look at this, look at the effect we can do. That's the thing that this god does. Isn't that cool? I'm not saying I'm 100% opposed to the latter, but I do prefer the former. And yeah, just across the board, the various genres that it covers, the quality, variety, and delivery of elements was top-notch. And yeah, so I think this is a good time to briefly mention that so I say a lot of positive things about Christopher Nolan. I'm not one of those people who think that, oh, like he's, no one's ever, like best director ever. And as a writer, he's also not the very best. He's very high quality, but yeah. There is one thing that I am starting to think of as slightly unfortunate habit of his, and I don't know. I kind of hope that he is able to stop indulging it. And I'm going to be perfectly frank. If he would be okay with it, I think if every movie he makes from now on is R-rated instead of PG-13, I think that could really be something. And I'm not pretending like some of my favorites of his are not PG-13. And I'm also not one of those people who, like, I know there are some people who say, oh, PG-13, that's like kid stuff, that you can't do with it. No. You could do something compelling with it, absolutely. And it's not that every movie has to be rated R, nor that, every movie has to be, for everyone or to, age-wise. But there are just some stories, and I definitely think, if you're going to go into like mythology, I think those tend to end up toothless if you go with, mythology. I choose that word very carefully. I appreciate there are some fairy tales where it can work well. I don't like how Disney treats its employees, but I do have a fondness for a lot of their animated adaptations of fairy tales, even though they tend to Disneyfy it, as it were. But yeah, this uses its R rating really, really well and delivers stuff that I very much want from an adaptation of this story. I'll talk about it in the thoughts section in detail. And also, Nolan's one of those directors, like, yeah, if he thinks it fits, he'll add it if the age rating allows for it. I also do appreciate, like, some of them he didn't really have a choice. I don't think he ever had a choice when it came to the Batman movies. I don't think they would have let him make R-rated Batman. back then at least. But yeah, according to Google, no post credits, so I did not stay through. I remember someone saying that, oh, look at who's gonna do a song during the end credits. We walked out as soon as the end credits started rolling. If it was the first song, then I don't see anything wrong with it, but I have no idea if that is what it is. Yeah, that brings us to the overall ranking. So I'm just gonna put it right here. So there we go. So I'm real quick gonna go over every movie that he has directed, worst to best, and yeah, the very lowest one is the only of these that I don't love. Dunkirk, low because the chronological editing jumps between the planes, the ships, and the soldiers ruin the momentum. In my opinion, everything I say in this is my opinion. Following, place low because at the end of the day, it feels more like an interesting experiment. I would say its primary value lies in, it's really, really great to watch if you want everything Nolan, if you want to watch everything he's done and, see how he started out. It's very impressive, but, compared to nearly everything he's made since, but it's still, like, I love that movie. Insomnia, low, because while it definitely holds up, it has aged very well. It is very clearly early stage Nolan. Memento, low, because it is a tad too contrived for its own good. I'd say that was before he really completely got the hang of that element. Batman Begins, low, because it is in way too much of a hurry. The Dark Knight Rises just is not quite as solid as the top picks. Interstellar, because it is schmaltzy. The Dark Knight is so near the top because it is basically completely flawless, and essentially all the ones above this are as well. Inception, one of the most emotionally engaging, legitimately fun heist film on the surface, and an excellent metaphor for the creative process, especially filmmaking. The Prestige, incredibly effective exploration of obsession and the magic, and how the tricks grow, is some of the most fun that Nolan has making these. Tenet, genuinely the very best spy action thriller that I've watched out of the more than 60 years worth of them that I've seen. And though I certainly didn't understand it the first time I watched it, I absolutely felt most of what Nolan wanted me to. Oppenheimer hits the ground running, never stops, explores both the man's work and how it hit him after. And then this for... Yeah, I would say I've pretty much said all the... I would just be restating what I've already said as strengths. That brings us to... Oh, right. Before I do thoughts, yeah, I rate this 10 incredible journeys out of 10. And that brings us to the thought section. So from here on out, I'm spoiling everything about this. Not necessarily in chronological order, but let me start by saying I would say that this was, of the versions I've watched of the Odyssey, this was the scariest when it comes to the Cyclops and Circe. It was the one that best captured just this kind of visceral, yeah, like there are parts of this that feel positively disgusting. And yeah, the two bits that I just mentioned are some of the top stuff, but also some of the stuff with the suitors, especially the way they treat the I'm afraid I'm struggling with the names, but the old servant was losing his eyesight, and the dog. And it's... I think my favorite use of the gods. I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, the only god that we see in person in this is Athena. And, from what I recall of the poem, she favors Odysseus. She loves how smart he is, and thus shows herself to him. And yeah, the fact that, yeah, like clearly Poseidon, let's see, Zeus and the sun god, they make their presence known, but we don't see them directly. They affect things without us seeing them. And I think that was the exact right choice for this movie. And I guess that does just about... Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've already more or less said, but of the adaptations I've watched, this was the deepest. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep this, well, chronological. I'll try to do this in the order that the film shows it. So I believe the very first thing we see is the suitors already there. And yeah, so I guess this is a good time to briefly talk some more about Anne Hathaway. So, as mentioned, I recently rewatched with my father, actually. We also watched this together, along with his wife, all three of us. All of us loved it. But yeah, we rewatched the Armand Assante version. And while I would definitely say that one did, to me, pen and depict the penultimate Penelope, I would say this was probably a penning of the ultimate Penelope. It's going to be very, very difficult to top this one. And yeah, I really appreciate that Nolan can see past, like, it really sucks that some people, when they think of Anne Hathaway, they just think of, like, some of her really early work, when it's like, you get that that's like a lot of what a young woman trying to make a name for herself in Hollywood would be doing, right? Like, it's not, I don't know. I mean, I suppose she could have gone, like, let's see, I would say Julia Stiles, Keira Knightley, Anya Taylor-Joy, that kind of more, non-traditional route, take some roles that are not necessarily like the most likable, relatable characters, but can really show the depth of the talent and such. But I mean, I've also heard a bunch of people hate on their early work and not really appreciate the depth of their acting prowess. So yeah, I don't know. It's almost like misogyny and patriarchy just utterly ruin people's ability to see reality for what it is when it comes to things like this. Bigotry, brain rot. Like, if you're sufficiently bigoted against a group, then you will become incapable of seeing positives about them or acknowledging, wait, that negative thing that I just heard about them, that can't possibly be true. I suppose that does. I would say the very best of Hathaway's performance, at least to me, came near the very end. Appreciated the part where she pointed out, she's been on, the throne has not been empty. She's been on it, and he somehow has more right to it because he can grow facial hair. And the bit with the yeah, they're at the very end, when she's talking to, she doesn't know it's Odysseus, but they're talking about Odysseus, and, he proves that he knows Odysseus, and all these little things, just, yeah, fantastic. I kind of love the choice that she does not leave that room very much. The 97 version, she's walking amongst the suitors, and, comparing it to this, like, I would definitely say, like, during this, I was thinking, like, yeah, I mean, she would not be safe around them, and yeah, I think 1997 was just a time when that kind of thing was not taken as much into account by men. I mean, by men. I think that does pretty well bring us to the yeah, it was awesome seeing Tom Holland in this. I am working on watching more than the Spider-Man movies with him, but yeah, he really nailed it, and there's like, I'm not sure any Peter Parker, any of his Peter Parker in this performance at all. I think that does bring us to, yeah, so we see the is that maybe when we see the couple of things from, right, and yeah, so I think this is also when we meet Robert Pattinson. I believe it's Antinous and Antinos. Uh, I had heard that he played a magnificent asshole in some of his. He's also someone I absolutely have to catch up on. But yeah, love his Batman. Love him in Tenet. I know not everybody has a high opinion of the Twilight saga. I thought he did well, and in general, those really felt way overhated to me. But I did videos on those movies, so if you want more detail about what I thought about them, you can watch those. But yeah, this is the first time I see him as just the absolute fucking worst. And I don't know, I just think it works really well for an adaptation of the Odyssey to have, maybe the head or at least one of the main suitors just be such a slimy shit. And yeah, just absolutely nails it. God, the fucking way he talks to Telemachus, maybe especially that very first, where he does the trailer line. My God, just absolutely spectacular. I think that's when we get a couple of, yeah, and so he tells Telemachus about, I saw him hunt, and we see the stringing of the bow. We see how he'll always, right before using it, he will, I forget what it's called, but he'll act like he's firing. He'll, yeah, almost like he's playing a harp essentially. But and that's one of the ways that Penelope knows it's him there at the end, because nobody else does that. Why would they? No, it's a little silly, but it works. I forget if it's in the poem, and that's also something some of the other versions don't set that up properly. And let's see. Yeah, we very early we get that thing about how he is clever, and by the end we realize maybe too clever for his own good. And that again is something, like the other versions I remember tend to reward the cleverness. It tends to be about, if you want to solve the problems of the world, you have to be clever. And I do largely agree with that. But as this also shows, what good is cleverness if never paired with empathy? They did not empathize sufficiently with the people of Troy. And by the time they realized, it was too late. I'm just going to do the Chaplin quote. People who think too much and feel too little. And let's see, I guess that does pretty much get us to the... But yeah, with all that set up, we get our first glimpse of Troy. And so I can definitely see the grifters. It's maybe gonna go one of two ways here. I'm not trying to like hedge my bets and do Monday morning quarterbacking, but my theory is either they're gonna keep screaming incoherently about how awful it is that Elliot Page is in this and that there are people of color and such, which honestly, I mean, if that really is what they want to do with their lives. I don't know. I almost feel bad for them. Like this is, do you really have no higher aspiration than that? Like mentally 12, you know? And I don't know. I hope they mature. I think a lot of them are deep down capable of it. I would love to see it. I don't even have to see it. I just want it to happen. It doesn't have to affect me directly in any way. I just have made my point and I'm gonna move on. But the yeah, I believe this is the first time I watch Elliot Page act since the transition, and you know, I have said positive things about his performances from before, and yeah, he is still great. Like oh my god, the part in the Hades, it really got to like, you made my last words a lie. Fucking amazing. Like I seriously don't understand. Like, I don't know. I appreciate I haven't watched everything he's done. Maybe he's done a bad job in something I haven't watched, but so far, let's see. I guess other than this, it really is just the X-Men movies, isn't it? God. No, I gotta watch more of his older work as well. I've heard some really great things about, let's see, I want to say it's Hard Candy, Juno, Super? I feel like I've heard he was great in Super as well. Um, yeah. Anyway, the yeah, it was very very effective. You know, he's lying there, getting hit with the bows, the arrows rather. They're not throwing bows at him, and that's where. So yeah, on the one hand, maybe the grifters are just gonna be like, oh, he shouldn't even be in this. But maybe on the other hand, they're gonna be like, watch it if you want to see him, you know, in pain. Which is also, you know, later we see Helen and her face. You know, that is maybe also something that they're going to cheer for. But I guess that is, yeah, and she's just, I'm sorry, Lupita Nyong'o, I don't know how she does it. Because this is not the first time that her role, if we're talking screen time, you would be like, well, that doesn't sound like that much. But it sticks. Like, I want to say it was one of the versions of the Jungle Book, wasn't it? I believe she did the voice. She did a voice there, and one of her deliveries just fucking broke me. It was amazing. Just, yeah. I have never seen her do a bad job. You know, every single time she pops up in something, I am so happy to see it, which is part of why I was like, you're upset that you get to watch one of the most talented actors of as long as we have been recording performances. You're unhappy about that because, oh, you don't like her skin color. Mentally 12. But the, I guess that brings us to the, yeah, I love the way they used Troy. You know, first we just see very, very briefly, and then later we get a bit more. You know, there's a thing about everybody knows about the Trojan horse, but have you ever heard the perspective of someone who is actually inside? And that is very much, you know, I mean, at this point, if you're going to cast John Bernthal, and you should, yeah, I mean, it doesn't exactly hurt to give him some kind of PTSD war veteran, something for him to really sink his teeth into, you know? He's done really well at other stuff. I'm not discounting that. And if I understand correctly, it is also something he himself wants to do. So it's awesome that he's been able to so much. He keeps finding, like, I wouldn't even necessarily say that the different ones he's played feel that much like. I mean, okay, so other than this, you've got Fury, you've got his Punisher, you have the shit, it's right on the tip of my tongue, not shit, but the yeah, what was the last one? maybe I'll remember it later. But yeah, he really, really nails that sort of thing, and makes each of these feel distinct from the others. But yeah, and then by the end, we understand the weight of the sacking of Troy. And yeah, once again, Nolan, like, he puts it right in front of us. It's right there. It's very early in the film. We see a little bit of Troy, and then it cuts away. And then only at the end do we understand just how big, like, because we don't need to see it, because it's, I'm not the first person to point this out, but technically the Odyssey starts right after that. Let's see, is it the Iliad maybe that I don't know, I guess ends with it. I actually don't even, I'm not 100% sure if I've read the Iliad, but the Odyssey starts shortly after, at least. It's about the Odyssey, Odysseus getting home after that. And yeah, I mean, as soon as we saw it in the trailers, a lot of us were like, oh, okay, we are going to see it. I mean, that is cool. It's something Nolan can make visually interesting, obviously. But yeah, I didn't expect it to come back. This is a case where knowing the source material really helped make this as nice subversive kind of thing. Like, I was thinking that it was just, not just, it was there to help, tell us, so this was a big deal because they talk about it. One of the first things in this is the, what are they called? A herald, maybe? The person, staying there, and the thing with, like, he hits this thing against the table, I think it is, and then he says a few words, and then he, rinse and repeat kind of thing, and that is about, Troy. So this thing of yeah, we first we're told that it happened, then we see a little bit of it with our own eyes. Yeah, I wasn't thinking that we were going to see very much more, but then there at the end we see how horrible it was, as all war is, of course. And yeah, that very, very effective done. And yeah, the other thing is, very early we had the thing about, the sea people are coming. And then there's the thing about, why did you abandon your village? We thought you were the sea people. We're not the sea people. We're here. What are you talking about? And as soon as that's said, like, yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only person in the audience who was like, oh, what a horrible mistake they made there. Of course these are not the sea people. They're there to protect people from the sea people. They want to get back to Ithaca so they can protect Ithaca from the sea people. And then there at the end, all we brought was ruin. You are the sea people, because that's just the thing. It's all about perspective. They were the sea people as of the sacking of Troy. And if I recall correctly, they did say that now that Troy has been destroyed, there is fear of the sea people. The sea people were always those who destroyed Troy. We just didn't realize it because we were following them and we wanted them to come home. And it's such an effective, because, like, early on I was thinking, okay, it seems like maybe Nolan here is doing a thing of, like, oh, look at how worried they are about a threat that's never going to materialize. Like, I was thinking it's maybe a metaphor for white genocide or something. Have you noticed how the way to get a white supremacist to care about genocide is to tell him that if he's not part of the voting majority, that's a genocide? But it's not a genocide to murder women, children, babies, because you hate them based on where they were born and to whom. Yeah. Bigotry brain rot. Anyway, yeah, by the end we realize, no, it's commenting on perspective. It's commenting on how once you start down, there are certain things, once you go once you cross a certain line, there's just no going back. And that felt to me like, I mean, by now look at how much Trump has lowered empathy in a lot of people in, over a decade of, being in politics. Thankfully, he hasn't been in power all that time. And I'm not, listen, I appreciate, there's this really great slogan. America is not the way it is because of Trump. Trump is president because America is the way it is. Absolutely agreed. But I would definitely say that there has been a marked change in tone since he first took power. And yeah, I mean, at this point, we're seeing people just openly saying, there are so many prominent conservatives right now saying that empathy is inherently wrong. Then how are you a Christian? Like, if Jesus preached one of the most significant things Jesus preached, in my opinion, as an atheist who is willing to acknowledge that there were really impressive things in there. I don't believe he's, the Son of God. I don't believe in any God. I haven't seen sufficient evidence. But if, one of the main things, and something that you don't even have to believe he's God to agree with, is empathy. If you don't think empathy is a good thing, I don't think you get to call yourself a fucking Christian. Just call yourself something else. I hate the way that they use this semantic bullshit to gain political power and be like, oh, Christian nation with that little empathy? No, you're fucking not. You're a capitalist nation. You're an oligarchy. You're approaching a dictatorship. You're a white supremacy nation. You're not a Christian nation, America. Not right now. Maybe you can be sometime in the future. But yeah, I'm gonna move on because this is yeah. Let's see. I think that does bring us nicely to, yeah, I thought it worked really well the way that every so often it would cut back to, I mean, it intermittently cuts between the different ones, but some of the stuff it especially cuts back to. I've already talked about Troy and the suitors. Another is Calypso. And we have this thing about, because that's the thing, like, I'm used to it being presented in chronological order, which means that we spend a few minutes, I mean, ultimately we don't spend that many minutes with Calypso here either, but if it's a few minutes in a row, that's one thing. But here, yeah, like, it felt like Odysseus spent years there. And I appreciate part of the value of in other versions for it to only be a few minutes and being told, oh, it's been years. It's this thing of like, time can fly if you're having fun, if you're escaping reality, kind of thing. Like, it's almost like drugs or something. But I do think it worked incredibly well here, especially because they keep cutting to the two of them and this thing about what do you remember? And we have the lotus flower consumption and these things, and then by the end it's like, you've been here for, what was it, 7 years, and you've forgotten everything except that you had a wife and a son, and you refused to let go of the brooch. I think that's what they called it. And most nights you called out the name Athena, but sometimes you called out Penelope. And I think that does pretty much, yeah, so they I also really appreciate how many suitors there are this time, and that once he had defeated, I don't know, maybe a dozen total or something, the rest of them knelt before him. And that really felt like that was a scene that the three of us watching agreed went on a little too long, but I think the idea is just really underlining, like, the social contract has been just not just broken but demolished. They violated Zeus's law when they sacked Troy, and now they're paying for it. He created these circumstances. Like, yes, Antinos is a sniveling coward, but how many of these other suitors would have behaved like this if not for, because once again, it's said very early on, everybody knows the story of Troy. Everyone has heard of what Odyssey, what they all did there. No one who wasn't there knows just how bad that was, but everyone understands that it was a big deal. And yeah, a lot of people took it as, oh, we can do that now? And that is the thing. Like, there are, a number of people out there in the world that if they feel like they can get away with something, they're going to do it. They're not going to stop themselves, even if they realize what they're doing is not ethical. And that's part of why we have to really be careful that the overall tone is not lowered. I swear I'm not going to spend forever on this, but I will just very briefly note, Like Stories of Old and Harlan Spinks both did excellent videos talking about Citizen Vigilante. No, don't even stop typing. I'm never going to watch that fucking movie. I don't know that I'll ever watch another Uwe Boll movie, not after The House of the Dead. My God, was that garbage. And Jesse Gender did a solid one about the way Graham Plattner's accusers were treated. I believe her video is called Leftist Misogyny is Still Misogyny. Really appreciate it. That's one of the things I love about the far left. We're all willing to call, perhaps not all, but a lot of us are willing to call each other out. I know I don't personally do it as much. I more try to highlight when others have done a really good job. A lot of the time, I just don't feel like I know quite enough, but 100%, like, Jessie hit it out the park, as she usually does. Phenomenal. Obviously, very unpleasant video to watch, but considering the accusations and the way it was covered by very prominent leftists. I think that is... Let's see. Yeah. I really thought they did a great job really underlining just how terrible the suitors are. And also just the sheer number of them, it really did feel like, yeah, what are you even gonna, how would you kick them out of there? Even before it was underlined that one, young woman was also feeding them information. But especially the way they treated, I already mentioned that, but the way they treated the man losing his sight and the dog. Fantastic job on the dog. I mean, that has to be a animatronic. I don't think you're allowed to film a dog that is that sickly in real life. But yeah, and a little tail wag at the end. Oh my God. Fuck. It was at that moment that I understood exactly why one of the trailers that played before this movie in theater was for that new I want to say, God damn it, I have to remember at least one name connected to it. Okay, title, Heart of the Beast, I think it was something like that. With apparently another very good boy. And I think that is... There's at least one more thing I wanted to say about the suitors. Yeah, just the way that, they're just so incredibly unpleasant, And, so they get to the Cyclops. I love these little things, like the detail that, some adaptations will have only one escape attempt and it's immediately successful. But if I recall correctly, in the poem there are two, and I forget if Odysseus could have escaped but jumps into the, to save the rest of them. I don't remember if that's, but yeah, and it was a fucking horror movie. And apparently he's been asked if he wants to make a horror movie, and he was like, sure, please do My God. If possible, I will be there opening day. Oh my God. He's already so fucking good at tension and suspense. And he, like, this is one of the times where he's shown, like, no, he will fucking go there. Like, oh my God. The Cyclops and Cersei both just, the fucking transformation stuff with Cersei. God damn. If he makes a fucking movie, entire movie, that is, like, I'm not expecting every scene to be like that, but, has more stuff like that and is hyper focused on that. Because listen, say what you will about him, he does tend to have like a real, what's it called, shortcut to like, he knows how to poke at our goddamn anxieties incredibly effectively. Now, I believe that covers the, let's see, where does that leave us? That gets us to the, yeah, so the so I wouldn't have hated if we did get the what is your name? I am nobody. I have been blinded. My brothers, who blinded you? Nobody has blinded me. That's probably my favorite exchange. It's a set of exchanges in the poem, But yeah, that thing about, like, he could speak this whole time. Why didn't he? Would you speak to an ant? So he's an ant eater? I mean, I understand where you're going with that. It just feels like, because, maybe the soldier was talking to, does he dance? Okay, I'm sure there's at least some nutritional value there. And the let's see, yeah, the way that he just walks in there, grabs some, eats some, goes to sleep, like, just like it's nothing, and yeah, like, it feels like a goddamn Venus flytrap, especially because he doesn't speak. Like, it genuinely just, like, yeah, why wouldn't he leave it open? What are they gonna do? Everyone who comes by is just a human. He locks them in, eats them, 2 per night. Like, he has nothing to worry about. And yeah, the blinding, goddamn, that was and the bit about, like, using the sword to get it to open its eye, very, very nicely done. And just little details, like the way that the eye, see, I'm used to being, like, I guess, horizontal, and it was like vertical instead, and the nose was also like slanted in a way, so it's like his entire face is slightly off in a way that just, I couldn't take my eyes off. And I kept trying to find, okay, so there's like, where does the makeup go, or is it animation, or what exactly? But just phenomenal. I can't claim I know exactly how they did it, but it's gonna be my paralysis, sleep paralysis demon tonight. I know that. And that was also the sounds of the crunching, and then at one point we see, like, the mouth, and I think, do we see him take a bite, or is it that there's like human meat in his mouth? Just fuck. And let's see. So that, yeah, and then afterwards we see Odysseus fire an arrow, and one of the other guys is like, "What the fuck did you do that for? Why couldn't you have shown mercy?" And oh my God, the part where he goes out into the water after them, incredible. And yeah, later we understand, yeah, because of Troy, it had that impact on almost everyone, and I really appreciate the way that, like, if you were there, you have regrets. If you weren't there, you either wish someone from there would come home to you, or you want to take something from someone who seems to have died there. And I guess that does bring us, let's see. I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say surrounding, oh no, yeah, that wasn't, that was it for the, so I have to admit, it's been so long since I've seen a version or read the poem. I didn't really remember those silver armored ones, but yeah, very nice little, they come up on, because yeah, like, at first we were thinking, like, oh, an adult, good, they can ask for directions, but then turns around, it's just a child, and then we're like, oh, how big must the adults be, and they ask for help. At first, this kid laughs and then screams, and it's like, oh no, that's not going to end well. And the way that the fucking trees were moving to block their path, and just absolute slaughter. I mean, that bit where one of the soldiers was thrown through a tree, I don't know. Was it CG? I mean, I guess if the tree was extremely thin, like what do they call it? Is it balsa wood? They have stuff they can break as like and still look like a tree, like the way that they'll make glass out of sugar. But yeah, very very impressive. And yeah, oh my god, they go out into the water and start like fucking up the ship. Just yeah, incredibly tense. And I guess that does. I also don't know exactly like could it have been forced perspective? I mean, there must have been at least some computer trickery going on there, but it was really impressive. And I think that is when Antinos becomes aware of ripping up the. Or wait, do we see? Yeah. He knows, but we don't know how he knows, and then later we see. Was that Mia Goth? That's another actress I have to watch more of. I've heard so many great things about. For example, I guess is it just called the X trilogy? Well, let's see. I shouldn't. I believe I know. It's X, Pearl, and Maxine. Heard really, really great things. I guess that is pretty much the yeah, I really like that Antinos, as soon as he realized, oh wait, Penelope would be unhappy if this happened, so he de-escalates the situation that he was gonna let get really bad because he, just yeah, he has zero integrity, and let's see, I feel like was their next stop maybe Cersei? I feel like that was that sounds familiar to me at least. And yeah. So we have the thing about, he's going to hunt and they demand that he stay and they'll, you stay, we go. And yeah, the thing about like, this is a mutiny. That's up to you. That was a Nolanism. And let's see, I think as was that bit with I know the song of Odysseus, I do not want it, I want Odysseus, or something along those lines, and but yeah, I really appreciated they didn't over explain the sacking of Troy, just how it felt, and a lot of that was conveyed visually rather than verbally over explained as he has sometimes in the past, and I think, but yeah, so they approach this place and pass various animals along the way. I have to admit, I remembered it as being they. Wait, is it that the island normally only has pigs, or is it just that Odysseus' men get turned into pigs? I don't remember. I remember that the men get turned into pigs, but I forget if all the animals on the island were pigs. But yeah, great bit with the finding, so Odysseus shoots one and then goes over to the body and turns out to be a guy, not an animal. And yeah, kudos to, it's one of those things where, you have the R rating for other reasons. Yeah, there's some man ass there, instead of this awkward camera work that sometimes, because I'm sorry, that is something, that's one of the reasons I hope I would love to see him only make R-rated stuff from now on, because sometimes when he does PG-13, it's just silly in the way that it has to cover up for the violence that would obviously be visible here. And I'd say Dark Knight Rises is probably the most the worst offender, especially close to the end. I think that is the but yeah, so if I recall correctly, normally Odysseus gets help from a god to deal with Cersei here, but here it's he's on his own. I will also say, as much as I do love the movie Troy, and I'm never gonna not love the decision. Wolfgang Peterson, in general, love his work. You know, Das Boot, and I remember loving Neverending Story. I think I might need to rewatch it because it's been like 20 fucking years, so I don't remember. I don't know if I would still love it today, but I remember loving it back when I watched it. Anyway, yeah, he was like, why would I include the gods? They're not necessary for the story. I first heard that when the movie first came out, and back then I was not just an atheist, but an anti-theist, which for those not in the know means I really could not stand religion or people who believed in it. I have softened a lot. You know, at this point it's conservative Christians and other conservatives, you know, conservative cishet white men. I have noticed those with power cause a lot of problems and then, you know, make excuses for it, blame the far left and such. And also recently, you know, I appreciate that that sounds like a false dichotomy. Keep in mind, a lot of them now act like if you're not far right, you're far left. So that's on them. But yeah, a number of the ones who don't have power stubbornly insist that it is not the conservative cishet white men who are causing all these problems, despite ample evidence that it is, and they insist on blaming minorities and insist that things should be even worse for them, even as things are already, you know, which is some of what we see in the reaction to Citizen Vigilante. Anyway, I think that does I feel like there's at least one more thing. Yeah. So Odysseus gets yeah, but the, oh my god, I love how much it fucking lingers on Cersei turning them, because like you could have just shown one. That would have been enough, you know. You show her turning one man into a pig, and then Odysseus gets in there, and there's no men, only pigs. We get it, but it showed like I don't know, half a dozen or something. And also, I love the bit with like, your armor, you will not need it. And they start taking it off, and they see, oh, there's a bunch of armor from other people, and it doesn't give them pause, you know. And yeah, she comes in, or he comes in, and we have this confrontation, and he was going to kill this bird to get her, you know, just yeah. So that is how far he has, you know, that is not heroic. That is really fucked up, you know. Let's see. Yeah. So actually, yeah, I think that was one of the first times where I was like, oh, this is a very dark version of Odysseus. You know, he's frequently portrayed as very heroic, like flawed, sure, but heroic. You know, he doesn't tend to do like really fucked up shit like that. Anyway, we have the exchange about, you know, she says they knew that I was alone, defenseless, and they still all walked right into my home. And I guess at this point I should recommend, so Cat Black has by now done multiple videos, all excellent, on voice memo guy, I think is what he's being called. And yeah, fantastic analysis as usual. She really, yeah, I'm so glad she's making videos. And I think that is, and that's more, you know, if you're starving for it, that's more, you know, someone far left criticizing others, clearly also on the left, because some of the arguments that she's, you know, pointing out the logical flaws in clearly are from leftists, not conservatives. And I guess, yeah, but you have that thing about, you know, so And Odysseus asks, did any of them attack? And she says, they would have, you know. And so I really hope that is not supposed to be a thing of like, oh, you know, you have to be careful, like, because you could really ruin a young man's life with a false rape accusation. Watch Data Mail's videos on, you know, debunking that all the misconceptions surrounding that notion. But I think the idea is that, you know, once again, this is after, chronologically, we haven't seen it yet, but this is after how bad the sacking of Troy was. So this is, again, violating the social contract, you know. There, you know, we used to have laws in this country. And now we're seeing just how bad people, you know, a lot of people are, and how bad some people expect others to be, even if they haven't yet done anything, you know. And but yeah, real quick, love that, you know, how fucking disgusting they look eating some of the time, and then she's like shaping their mouths into snouts, and she shoved her goddamn arm deep, in like elbow deep, into the mouth. I don't even know what that, like, did I miss something? Was there like a purpose to that, or is she just fucking with him or something? But that's fucking brutal, and I'm sorry if something of that kind of mind fuckery happens, like anxiety poking at mind fuckery happens in a Christopher Nolan horror movie, then I want it as soon as he is confident that he can have something spectacular out, because my God, that, Jesus Christ. Let's see. And yeah, the way that, you know, there's the thing about, like, oh, go ahead and kill one of these pigs, you know, and all the pigs wanna join, and yeah. Let's see. But yeah, I thought they did a really great job. She came across as sympathetic, which is not always the case with her. I thought this did a good job of really toning down the misogyny that some adaptations have. I forget about the original poem, but yeah, this, you know, I mentioned in, yeah, this is not a spoiler for that, but there's at least one version, one adaptation out there that I'm just going to quote. So I believe this, if I recall correctly, this was not Outlaw Vernon himself. It was a commenter but yeah, on his site, there was a commenter who said that there's no way, I've forgotten his name. Michael Douglas had a phase in his career that could be summed up as, ugh, it's so annoying how all these beautiful women want to fuck me. And there are versions of, you know, adaptations of the Odyssey that also fit that. Yeah, I get it. I appreciate they're conveying things, but yeah, after a while, it's just like, okay, so is he gonna meet one woman that doesn't want to fuck him and isn't conventionally attractive? Like, it's just, you know, and I really appreciated that here, because if I recall correctly, Cersei is one of them, Calypso is one of them, and with Calypso, like, yeah, I mean, I think they maybe were implied to have had sex in this version, but it's not, it's more this thing of like forgetting, you know, and that is also present in other versions, but here it's emphasized to this kind of yeah. And I think that is when Telemachus leaves. You know, very clever, this thing of sneaking out. And right, I also really appreciated the setup with the scar. Um, yeah, but anyway, so Telemachus goes, and you know, as soon as the suitors realize, of course, you know, they agree, we must construct additional pylons. I mean, we have to get some assassins to Pylos. And yeah, incredibly tense, that whole thing. But also, yeah, I am not unhappy about seeing Tom Holland and John Bernthal together. I don't think I'm gonna hate it. If hypothetically I were to see a similar thing in the not too distant future, and yes, I saw the memes. They were very funny. I is that a spoiler? I'll talk about them when I talk about the other thing in the video I do on, but just in case it's technically a spoiler, I'm not going to say it here. If it's a spoiler for that movie, I mean. Anyway, yeah, it was fantastic. So many wonderful little details. The thing about how, yeah, seeing the horse from the ends, yeah, um, the way that some of them fucking drowned in the tide, Jesus Christ, and I love that it didn't have wheels. I've seen other versions. I forget if it's all the adaptations I've seen, but some of them there are wheels, and it is like, how'd they make wheels out of leftover ship parts though? Like, I mean, even if you want to say, well, shields maybe, could they sustain? Could they carry that kind of heavy? Because that's not like a shield is not meant to hold up that much wood, and not to mention the weight of the people inside. But yeah, it's sort of buried, and I also really appreciate it. So if I recall correctly, it's normally said in the other versions I'm familiar with, it's said as like, oh, this was a gift from to Troy, and I appreciate that's it's been said for as far back as I can remember. I think 30 years ago was the first time I heard someone say, why would you accept the gift? Like, how silly are you? How naive are you? You're going to accept the gift from your worst enemy, 10 years of war, and you're just going to let in and then in this one, it's like, no, 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 it's not a gift to Troy. It's an offering to Athena. And at that point, it's like, I mean, we can't fucking destroy an offering. What the fuck do you take us for? That's awful. No. Render onto Athena what is Athena's. And they do also check. They stab with the sword, and some of the time they miss, and it's like, oh, okay, we're okay. No, that guy just got stabbed in their goddamn shoulder, and he's like trying to cry out in pain, and the others have to like cover his mouth so he doesn't fuck it up for everyone. And there's the cut, to wipe the blood off the fucking sword, and then we see the guy lives. No blood, must be safe. And then the fucking citizens are, of course, saying what again? 30 years ago, I heard a bunch of people say, just destroy it, burn it, burn it. And there's a guy who they have to like physically restrain because he's gonna climb out of there because he's terrified of being fucking baked. In that way, I mean, hypothetically, maybe he would enjoy the other way. He seems like he maybe needs to chill just a tiny bit. But seriously, though, like, who amongst us, like, how? I don't know how you keep a cool head in that circumstance, And yeah, appreciated the detail that they had to translate. There was the thing about, why did you abandon your village? We thought you were the sea people. Let's see. I think that is yeah, and so Helen, uh, yeah, was not fond of hearing this really disgusting comment about, like, I guess now she'd only launch 500 ships. Did I miss something? Maybe it's explained in the poem. I about why her face is but yeah. Appreciated the part later where she apologizes, says, it was my fault and I'm so sorry. Once again, all these people regretting the war, and so many end up doing so. And that's such an important thing. That again is a universal thing, but like right now, look at how many people are talking. I guess at this point, it's primarily like media figures more than I'm not seeing that many like regular voters still do. I mean, on their social media, on social media that is not like billionaire owned, but yeah, look at the way they're talking about like, oh, Iran, like, what are we gonna do? I don't know, not tear up the agreement that Obama did. Like, listen, I'm not gonna pretend like everything Obama did was great. I want to say it was FD Signifier who did a really great video talking about like comparing and contrasting. I'm afraid I forget the title though. We're sure to look it up right now. But I mean, if you find yourself watching an FT Signifier video, and it's because I told you that, you know, to watch him, you're welcome, I guess, to you. He doesn't need my, don't worry, I'm not, oh my god, shit, do I sound like a fucking white savior or something? God damn it, I'm not saying that, like, oh, this black guy definitely needs the help of a white guy. No, obviously. But yeah, he's fucking amazing. Absolutely. Anyway, I think that does cover the, he recently did a Nebula video called Welcome to Goon World. Fantastic. Looking forward to the rest of the Goon World series. And no fucking wonder it wouldn't fly on YouTube. But yeah, I think there's at least one more thing I wanted to say about the we get the brief bit, where Helen starts talking about, like, maybe we should tell Telemachus, maybe we should tell Amachus what my twin did when Agamemnon returned. And that's when we get the part that, I don't know, maybe at this point it's just part of John Bernthal's contract, where he goes, no. I kid. I love it. I'm here for it. Like, if he feels the need to say that and everything, I'm not complaining. I think that does bring us to the so on the that's when the Hades, they go to Hades. Loved that whole thing, and there's the line about, it's where the lake of fire meets, was it the lake of ice or something like that, and fantastic. I mean, I think location shooting, they found an incredible place to film that. But the let's see, we have the several other versions I've seen is basically Lake of Fire. And that's because a bunch of these are made by conservative Christians, or not always conservative, but Christians who can't really look beyond their own, like, not every fucking version of hell is a Lake of Fire. Because if I recall correctly, that is, like, in the poem, it's Lake of Fire meets Lake of Ice, or something along those lines, so yeah. And bodies rising up out of the dirt, oh god. And so gonna say the most obvious fucking thing, but yeah, Elliot Page's best acting in the movie is, of course, in the scene. But yeah, fan-fucking-tastic. Oh my god. I legit don't understand. Like, I know I've seen at least one person. I remember that was actually, it was a meme. I want to say it was OT, or one topic at a time, who did like a reaction, and there was a thing of someone being like, I was hoping that now that he transitioned, Elliot Page would be a better actor, but no, I still think he does a bad job, or something. And someone else like tagged that as, or titled it as something as, a hater but never a transphobe. Because, like, yeah, there's no misgendering, dead naming. It's like, just, and they're even like, not, I mean, now Elliot Page is who he wanted to be, and then they say, but he still can't act. Like, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not transphobic about it. That's wonderful. That's yeah. I feel like that covers that. That's also, I'm used to it being, well, let's see, I think he maybe talked, I recall at least one version where Odysseus talks to his mom, who he wasn't expecting to be dead by then, but other than that, he's talking to the wise guy. And I thought it was much more compelling to see him talk to this young guy that he feels he did let down, and then you have the bit with, well, here are all the ones you didn't bury. They are not okay with, and throughout the rest of the movie, you have this thing, we have to go west, honor the ones we didn't bury, and all these, just, yeah. But yeah, one of the times where he has to retreat, it's from the spirits of his own because he did not treat their sacrifice with respect. That really says a lot. And again, like, just gradually building, and then by the end we realize, oh, it's been the whole movie. We just didn't realize it at first, because yeah, there are all these little things. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing Odysseus struggle against, like, which is also, like, there's the thing about, multiple people say something about, like, if he's not home yet, does he even want to be? And I thought it really worked that, I mean, yeah. No, yeah, yeah, see, that's the thing. Was Poseidon trying to stop them that whole time? Or I would definitely say at least some of the time it was like, okay, that has to have been Poseidon, though. But, one point Odysseus says, I mean, they just, every single time we had bad weather, they were like, Poseidon, you fucked us. Why'd you do that, Odysseus? But he himself doesn't fully believe it, and later he does seem to be more respectful of the gods. But yeah, he is trying to he's trying to justify, he's rationalizing, and because he can't admit to himself how bad Troy was just yet, not out loud, but it is why he's not being more, he doesn't want Penelope to see him like this. He doesn't feel he deserves to come home. He doesn't realize how bad things have gotten at home. I guess I'll just very briefly say, so yes, obviously, yes, Agamemnon's helmet, I appreciate it's got this kind of Batman vibe going. I guess it would bother me more if Nolan was trying to make everything Batman, but this is the only non-Batman Batman that he's Batman since Batmaning. I mean, even before he Batman, he didn't Batman. So, I don't know, and it's like one fucking helmet. It's not even in the movie that much. I just didn't think it was that big of a deal overall, personally. And I'm not saying it's only a criticism put forth by the ones who also said that you can't have people of color and you can't have a trans man. And of course, yeah, they were too quick on the trigger. They completely misunderstood. I remember a bunch of them talking about, like, oh, Elliot Page, who of course they dead named misgendered, is going to play, Achilles. And I think it was Ant, or Anthony Gramuglia, for those uninitiated, who pointed out that would actually make a lot of sense. I'll just go watch his videos on them. It's great on that issue. But yeah, he's not even playing Achilles. Like, I don't think, did Achilles appear in the movie at all? He's playing Sinon, completely different character. Like, my God, I swear it must be so frustrating to understand so little of the world as so many of these conservatives. I mean, for some of them, it is clearly an act. They're just doing it for clicks and thus money. Anyway, I think, and it's worth noting, some of them before Trump, or very early Trump, they were much more mild. They and then they realized, oh, hey, we can do that too. We can say something really offensive and nonsensical and get a lot of fame and make some money off it. Anyway, if you're not watching, I want to say Movies with Mark. That's his channel name. If you're not watching him talk about the various conservative grifters here on YouTube, you are missing out. And let's see. I will say, well, let's see, where was I? Right, yeah, and one of the I think maybe the most recent one, one of the most recent ones at least, was on Melanie Mack, who I think I'm at least slightly familiar with. Didn't Melanie Mack meddle with a medley? No, it's just me doing a silly verbal joke that I liked. Anyway, I think that does bring us to the but yeah, and you have the thing about, first he doesn't tell them everything that the wise guy told him, and then he does, and the various consequences. And I did kind of like this. It's also, it's Nolan-esque to have this thing of like, whether they know or not, they end up, we have this thing of like the value or lack thereof of telling people who are desperate what is going to happen if they don't temper their needs, because these are legitimate needs. They need water, they need food, they need to go home. But even when they know what will happen, they still go ahead and do it, and that is, again, this thing of, once you start down this road, once you go far enough down that road, at least, how do you go back? They know this is going to go badly if they, and they just say, well, we'd rather drown than starve. There's a real choice between Scylla and Charybdis. Oh, and then we get to the choice between Scylla and Charybdis. And let's see, I think, but yeah, he finds them dancing around the golden calf. I mean, eating the sun god's calf. And I suppose that pretty well. Yeah, I think that is when Scylla and Charybdis, fantastic, my favorite version so far. And love this thing of it's their choice, and he makes them think that he wants them to just like he tricks them into sacrifice. It's the trolley problem basically. And yeah, that is when and so the entire ship ends up smashed, and he reaches Calypso, and I'm so glad that Charlize Theron is still acting. Like, I knew from the moment that I heard that she was going to be in this movie, before I even knew she was, like, I would have been surprised if she had, like, my money was on Cersei or Calypso, because you're not going to cast her as like, oh, some servant girl or something. No. She's going to be, and yet she doesn't even have that much screen time. Neither does Zendaya, who, by the way, radiates wisdom. Like, I guess this is the first, oh my God, it feels so ridiculous to say out loud, but I think this is the only thing I've seen her in that wasn't MCU. But I'm working on that. I'm going to watch more of her work, because she's incredible. And again, like, I don't really see any Michelle in this performance. Like, this is much more of like a wise beyond the actor's age kind of character, and it's just, yeah. I also really appreciate, like, she doesn't appear that many times, but each time it feels significant. And I think that is when we get to the the sirens, also really nicely done. I like the thing with the test their ears. First one to say yes sir gets a week's ration of food. Well, and he hears it. And I also really appreciate we barely saw the sirens. It was really very, very far off in the distance and kind of hazy, out of focus. Because isn't that what they are? They're a sweet memory. They're something that you yearn for. As soon as we get a close look at the sirens, they no longer completely function as the sirens, Perfect choice. I kept sitting there thinking, like, we're going to see them, right? We're going to see them. And then of course we're not going to see them. And we also, we like, the music sounds, it really does nail this thing of like, yeah, it sounds fairly pleasant, but there is also this kind of like this bittersweet quality to it, and that really did, like, the longer you listen to it, at least it really, yeah, at first I was like, wow, that does sound great, and I was like, yeah, and he explains, and it is essentially, I mean, it's almost like this thing of like, I mean, the original definition of nostalgia is pain from an old wound. Not a positive memory that you miss, but an old wound. And yeah, the yeah, I think that does bring us nicely to that last little bit. So yeah, so he protects Telemachus, and love the little bit, and yeah, oh my god, the way that, so when we see the uh thieves, the assassins who are headed to Pylos, when we see them like steal from this elderly, nearsighted guy, like I was sitting there thinking, oh, these assholes, god, who does that? And it wasn't until near the end of the movie that I was like, well, shit, that's not that different of a situation from Odysseus and his men with the Cyclops, though. They were also like, they just walk in and start eating his food. And I appreciate, Zeus's law. By then, they had already broken that at Troy. They chose that, and now they have to live with the consequences. And, they're reluctant to. And that is like something we all have to. Everybody's going to make a mistake at some point in our lives. After watching this, my father and I talked about how the movie is sort of a metaphor for, the struggles of life. That was, his point about it. And yeah, this was some of the biggest mistakes they make are at the very start. When we're young, we make some of our worst mistakes. And if we're extremely lucky, they don't haunt us for the rest of our lives, and so the sacking of Troy and the way they deal with Cyclops, compared to like, yeah, it's a mistake to spend 7 years forgetting things with Calypso, but it's not really on the same, they're not destroying, these priceless things and murdering people, so it's a very different, but yeah, then we have the let's see, I but yeah, it's all about perspective, and that's also why we don't perceive them as the sea people until the end, and I think that might bring us to the, so yeah, he manages to get back to where he once belonged. And yeah, I love the bit where so they're trying to keep them keep away, but Telemachus is like, make sure you bring that beggar to me, and he helps. I really appreciate, here near the end, there's some really cool action, fighting off the Pylos assassins and the suitors there at the end. But other than that, it's not like non-stop action. And you could very easily turn this into non-stop action. I believe I've watched at least one version that was near non-stop action. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, and the way there's like one drop of blood on the cloth because they've just killed the actual, the people working there. And yeah, the way Telemachus, gradually pieces together who it is, and the dog wagging his tail is a major, yeah. Oh my god, the thing about like, where are your dogs? You had to burn them. And well, at least it was, they spared your young servant. We also had to burn his brother's body. Jesus Christ. Also, I don't think that it's accidental that the I guess I'll keep it short because I feel like this is getting long. Yeah, I thought it was very effective. This thing of, the Helen's twin, getting revenge over, this yeah, the father of her daughter sacrificing the daughter's life to the gods. And then we have the thing about, well, the sacrifice is all about giving up the thing you love the most, though. You realize how fucked up that sounds, right? And at that point, of course, he doesn't, but later he has a greater appreciation of it. But yeah, And yeah, that leads to her killing him, because what he did was unforgivable. And that's part of, or that is why Odysseus shows up in disguise, which I thought worked. I've seen other explanations for it that are fine, but this was the one where I was most like, okay, yeah, for sure, gonna be, yeah. I guess that does bring us all the way to the end. Yeah, I like the way that I think it was mentioned at least once too many. I think it was fine that Antinous said it twice, but then there was also someone from the crowd who called him plate licker, and it's like, we get it. But yeah, they think that the lowest thing you can be is someone who can't afford enough food that they feel the need to lick the plate, even as they're sitting there eating other people's food. Like, Jesus. Um, and also that line about, all I know about your father is that what was it, like, he has gamey meat and thin wine. And then you have the thing about, well, several seasons ago, you had our prime stuff, that's the... But yeah, they treat beggar Odysseus very badly. And the thing about he goes around begging, and I love the line about the best view of a man is from below, and it's so true. I'm gonna quote another movie character. You can learn a lot about someone based on how they treat you when they don't have to treat you well. They think they can get away with abusing him, so they do. And let's see, I guess that does it. Yeah, so he talks to, we have the thing about, wash his feet. That's really not necessary because he knows she's going to recognize the scar, and he's like, shh, keep it quiet. I was, and yeah, he explains about the sacking of Troy, and it was fantastically done. I appreciate how much of it the visuals were allowed to speak for themselves, not like over-explained. And yeah, when they kill one of the women, she looks just like Athena. And that is, of course, also her statue being decapitated, as one of them, shouts out, "Destroy their idols," or something like that. It was like, that's clearly Athena, though. Did you look at it at all? Like, and yeah, this line about, I saw 10 years of wrath unleashed in one night, and that is one of the reasons why war should be the absolute last resort. Violence in general should be the last resort. I'm not saying it's never necessary. Sadly, it was necessary at Stonewall, and it was necessary to forcefully fight during World War II against the Nazis. But but yeah, it's propaganda. It's the way hate builds. And yeah, I think that does praise that. So yeah, he explains that's why this whole time he's been reluctant to come home. And yeah, just really, really powerful. And then we get the big fight, and I've said most of what I wanted to say about it. I did just want to briefly note, so while definitely he sells it, I did not think we needed to see Antinous say 3 different, it's like, swords, get the swords. Shields, there are shields now. Spears, it's like, we get it. He's a coward. He's a sniveling little shit who tells other people what to do, but doesn't have the guts to do it himself. So I'm not saying that he's literally Donald Trump. I'm just saying I don't think there's no Donald Trump in this character. And but yeah, I appreciated this thing of splitting up. So Telemachus is trying to stop the guy from, yeah, and the thing with locking him in there, and the elderly guy is like, I told you were too loud, because he might not have been able to see him, but he could hear him from very far away. And so he locks him in. But then, of course, he uses one of the weapons to make a hole in the floor. And so, now Telemachus has to try to stop him. That was a good fight. And then there at the end, Nolan's expectation subversion, but it works well. This thing of like, yeah, I was like, wait, why is Penelope leaving on a boat alone and Telemachus is staying? And then we find out, no, he was just already on the boat, and this thing of like, don't leave me again. No, I'm not dying, but we are going to have to go into exile. And yeah, now Telemachus can rule without, this backseat driver bullshit. And yeah, the finally Penelope gets, not only reunited, which happens in, the various versions, but also gets to go on an adventure of her own. Odysseus had his big, and they're going out to make things right. They're going out to honor the dead. They're going west. And I fucking love the whole thing with Antinos with the, Sinon told me to give you this. He told me to give you back your tell, when you get to Hades, and it's oh my god, I kind of fucking love when Nolan actually tackles, because it's such a cliche Hollywood line, but this thing of like, when you get to hell, tell them I sent you. When you get to Hades, tell them I'll go west and make things right, and tell Sinon that I gave you back your shame. And then also notice how much that sets him off when he's like, that's not mine. That's no. I didn't trick someone else into taking my place in the war. I would have gone. I had bone spurs. I mean, that was yeah, very very nicely done. I feel like I've said everything that I had to say. I'm just gonna real quick mentally fast forward through the entire thing to see if there was anything else that I really badly wanted to. I really appreciated the way that so Athena is not like spelling anything out to him. I thought that worked really well. That's something I've seen in other versions, and I thought it worked fine there. But yeah, here and to do it this way, and you have this thing of like, well, if the gods would just speak in ways we understood, and this thing of like, well, who doesn't understand, what was it, sorrow and pain? And yeah, I mean, we can apply that to, you knew that Poseidon would not want, the let's see, yeah, wasn't it? Am I thinking of the right? Yeah, I feel confident that it made sense in context at least. I need to, yeah, I gotta close up the video. I'm getting tired here. The movie was 3 hours. Just got back when I started recording this, so yeah, but that I believe is everything that I had to say about it. So yeah, just absolutely amazing. Can hardly wait to see what next. And I right. So as others, yeah, I've already said, you don't have to do like an exact verbatim adaptation, and the original's still there. I do think this is going to help inspire some decisions in future ones, but yeah, I could imagine they will make, I mean, Nolan made his Batman trilogy. Now we have the Batman, and we also had Batfleck. Like, there's going to be other versions, and I feel like there's going to be interesting things about at least a bunch of them. But I don't know. There was this one thing that I was really holding out hope that they would actually include in this. But yeah. Okay, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think that it was a mistake that at no point does this depict Circe the sorceress selling seashells by the seashore.